How's it going? This is Tampa 2, a weekly video series on the Tampa Bay Bucs, brought to you on Animal House Media. I'm Sean, this is Matt, and we are two diehard Bucs fans from upstate New York, and we're just looking to talk a little about Bucs games and news and kind of get all the current events going.
Let's go. Sean, I just think it's perfect because for living right down the street from each other, other than texting on Thursday night, we haven't even talked about the game, which is like –
this is our first time going through the game besides for the 600 text messages we usually send.
Right, every single play. Every single play.
Yeah, so let's get started. We'll talk about the game versus the Cowboys. What's your initial reaction on the game?
At the end of the day, as a true Bucs fan, I think we're lucky to win that game, only because I think we gave them every opportunity to beat us, you know? But at the end of the day, the one thing that comes out true is Tom Brady's Tom Brady.
He's so much smarter than what he was then.
At the age of 44, Brady steps up, avoids the rush, throws, caught, touchdown, Antonio Brown.
Like, I understand now the New England Patriots fan swagger when they had Brady, because when that camera turned to him at the beginning of the fourth quarter, when there was a minute and 20 seconds left, and he just had that like look in his eyes, like we're gonna have the opportunity to get into field goal range. Are we gonna make the kick? Are we gonna make the plays? I mean, we did, but you knew Brady was gonna put us in a spot.
And it's kind of crazy that besides for the last 8 games of the season last year, that's when we kind of first got the taste of what Tom Brady is. Like the first half of the season, he was not the New England Patriots Tom Brady. Obviously, he was still getting to know the offense.
Right.
And as a Bucs fan, we always know that those are the kind of games we lose. Primetime game, we turn the ball over, make mistakes. We lose those 9 out of 10 times usually. But that's the sign that we actually win that game and offense is clicking and everything. That's a game we usually don't steal, and we just stole that.
I mean, we didn't. I mean, outside of the playoffs last year, our MO was we couldn't win at night. We couldn't win a big game. And that showed in the Saints games. And we just, like you said, our offense wasn't clicking the way it was. And I think our defense was always there, and they played lights out at the end of the year, and our offense was buzzing. But for sure, at the end of the day, week 1, I think you see it across the league. It's tough to win, no matter if you're the reigning defending Super Bowl champion or if you're a middle of the road bottom tier team. It's hard to win games in the NFL. So when you get a team like Dallas coming into town, obviously you have the big bullseye on your back because you just won the Super Bowl. But this is a team through 4 games last year before they lost their starting quarterback where they were hanging 40 points in the team. So this is no easy draw week 1, and I think they weathered the storm well. Our offensive and defensive line picked up right where they left off last year. I don't think we gave up a sack. There were a couple pressures, but at the end of the day, we kept Brady clean, and that's partly because Brady gets the ball out, as everyone knows. But our offensive line from across the board, you know what I mean, from Smith to Wirfs, Alley, they were sound all night, that's a big thing. Because I know early in the year last year, we saw the penalties in Chicago. We saw those things those weren't really apparent in that first game, which is huge, I think.
And Smith just continuing that momentum from the playoffs, which is crazy, as he's probably one of the most criticized Bucs players by Bucs fans. Mm-hmm. And he has stepped it up huge this last 8 games of last season and this game 1. And kind of going into more of the game, we talked about the lines. Obviously, offensive line looked good, but front 4 and defense pass rush was a little shaky there. Didn't get much pressure on Dak. Started getting to him a little late. Vita Vea started bull rushing him up the middle. But, blitzes weren't really getting home. But I think that has a lot more to do with the Cowboys just having an unreal O-line. And Zeke kind of showed up blocking. He was getting some blows from White, but he was chipping them just enough where he couldn't get in there.
Yeah. And they were getting the ball out quick. It was one of those things that I agree. Our front 4 is too talented across the board, and that includes Joe Tryon, who's going to kind of be in a third down rush role that we got to be able to get there with 4. As good as our linebacker pressures are, Devin White gets shot out of a cannon. Levante David, when they bring him, he gets home. But we got to be able to get home with those 4 because we can get home with those 4. And you saw it last year in the Atlanta game. Early in the game, we kind of got beat up a little bit because we couldn't get pressure, the game that we played in Atlanta. And then late in the game, we had a couple sacks, Shaq Barrett. So I think that's one of the big things with our defense is we got to be able to get there with the 4 and be able to supplement it with bringing the linebackers, because Devin White, when he comes, it, like you mentioned, more times than not he gets home. I mean, Zeke picked him up well a couple times, but I think we got to get there with 4.
I think that has more to do with the matchup, the Cowboys, and Zeke being one of the only probably 230-pound plus running backs who can face Devin White head on.
Yeah.
But so if we go into more so the good of the game, obviously offense is probably the first thing that sticks out. I mean, from the first snap, we were clicking AB, looks like AB. It's just weapons on weapons, and looks like they got their groove down early, which we didn't see early last year.
Right. I agree.
Special teams. I mean, something that we've struggled with for years.
Yep.
I mean, we still have one kickoff return for a touchdown in history.
Yeah. And honestly, usually, and I'm one of those guys that, especially when you have Tom Brady on your team, when we get punts, I'm always thinking we're going to get a penalty. You know what I mean? We're going to cough it up, because that's our special teams has been not great. You know what I mean? But the fact that we had some returns that brought us into range, even though we got brought back on some penalties, I agree. Our special teams was huge. And at the end of the day, it came down to a couple kicks on both sides of the ball, and their special teams didn't make them, and ours did. So
Mickens is another guy. He averaged 31 yards a return on kickoff, which is just – that's huge. I mean, we're used to being tackled at the 10-yard line, having full field to go. Obviously, punt game has been one of our strong shoots for years. What did we get? Got a little – we were 49.2 yards per punt and 75% inside the 20. That's just solid field position with our defense. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, going off of that, Pinion NFC Special Teams Player of the Week, and that's, I mean, that's, I know it's just a week 1 award, but that, I mean, we were on. I mean, and kind of snowballing off of that, the importance of our special teams. I mean, and that's with Zach Trainer, our long snapper, playing half the game with a broken hand. So we got a backup long snapper coming in, which is something that I think we got to keep an eye on. You know me, as a long snapper, that's a huge part of the game, and that's not easy just to step in and be like, all right, I'm gonna throw darts. But that's kind of another hats off to our special teams, like our long snappers in there, broken hand. Arians is talking about, he didn't even know about it until after the game, seeing the injury report, which is kind of, I mean, that's awesome to see that our guys are, you know, buckling down, they're getting it done in a game that it came down to, you know, special teams play.
Yeah, so we got the good, but we all know the game was also ugly. So we get to the bad a little bit. Same thing as usual. Secondary did not look great. Doesn't help that Murphy Bunting dislocates his elbow, nasty injury.
Yeah, and, second drive.
And Whitehead being out, but comes back to one guy, I think, Maldine.
Yeah, and sometimes I see it, and I'm pulling my hair out because, yeah, we've seen him before, right? We get him at press man, and he gets caught looking in the backfield. But he just had times that we were letting guys catch the ball with 5 yards around him. You know, like there comes a point where he looked lost. He looked lost at times watching slow-mos and watching the all 22. It's just like, I don't know if it's a coverage thing, but he just looked like he was in space.
And he's a guy he's got a ton of athletic talent. I mean, he's probably might be our fastest guy in defense.
Yeah.
Saw the Aaron Rodgers pick 6 last year. Guy can book. But, yeah, when the ball's in the air, he's looking back at the quarterback and just has ball skills are just not there sometimes.
Yeah.
But, I mean, hopefully the way he played in the playoffs last year, hopefully he brings that back and starts locking down a little bit because we're going to need him to. And he has experience. But besides that, Winfield looks solid again. And
Whitehead back is going to be huge for us.
Yeah. And Davis is still solid. I mean, he's still pretty locked down over there.
And of course, and what's huge about bringing Whitehead back, I think, is now you can implement Winfield and Mike Edwards in that more nickel hybrid role, because now you have that true safety back there with Whitehead, and I think that's going to alleviate some pressure that we have on, you know what I mean, our I would say lack of depth now at corner. Even though I love Ross Cockrell, like we're going to have guys who are going to step up and play big, but at the same time, like Murphy Bunting played his butt off late in the year. I mean, he was a cornerstone opposite of Carlton. So that's one of the things that right now it's just secondary depth, that quickly we got a guy coming off of a labrum and a guy who potentially could be out for the year with a blown out elbow, that all of a sudden we're like, all right, I mean, in the NFL, secondary is You know what I mean? We're going to see it this week with Atlanta. Like, they didn't play great last week, but they throw the ball all over the yard, and they got weapons that can kill us, as they've done for, as we know, you know what I mean, years.
Yeah. And like, the Falcons are going to have some talent at receiver, but Cowboys also have just 3 studs at receiver, and Dak comes out throwing the ball 55 times a game again.
Right.
And you're not going to be able to run the ball on us like usual. Middle of the defense is stout, as always.
And again, that's a tip of the hat too. Like I mentioned, like, Cowboys are an explosive offense. They got guys who can run. They got weapons all over the place, and Dak, you know, keeps you on your toes. But going off of that too, with the bad, one of the things that, and this is kind of a hybrid, and a lot of two of these things fell on these 2 guys is our run game and our back play. For 2 guys who are veterans in the league at this point, Ronald Jones and Fournette, I get it. Fumbles happen, you cough it up, but like, that was one of his first 2 carries in it, and he gets it popped out on him, which is a huge momentum shift, because at that point I think we're up 9 points. We got a chance to go down and make it a double-digit game. He coughs it up. Defense holds him, right? And we get the ball back, and then we have the pick with Leonard Fournette that goes off his hands. That, like, those 2 things out of those 2 guys were killer. And honestly, I didn't expect it, just because I know Rojo in the past has had some fumble issues when he gets those crazy spins going, but all last year, I mean, the second half of the year, those 2 guys were solid with ball security. And even Fournette he had his stretch of early in the year, those brutal drops on passes out of the backfield. But at the same time, late in the year, he had some huge plays in the Saints game for the touchdown, other third down conversions that, to be honest with you, we threw the ball to him out in the flat, and I'd be like holding my breath, because sometimes he's wide open and he drops them. But he changed that towards the end of the year. And then this first game, you know, we got a screen that bounces right off his hands. It's just, those were 2 plays that were backbreakers.
Yeah. But then Fournette later in the game catches that one ball on third down that Brady's halfway to the ground, just chucks it up. Fournette mosses a guy and gets the first down. That was a huge
play. Micah Parsons. I mean, a linebacker that's athletic. Yeah. You know, and Lenny goes up and gets that and gets the first down.
So hopefully he continues that trend and not the drop screen trend. But, yeah, we're definitely going to get the run game going, get Rojo to start getting those 5 or 6 yards of carry he gets when he just hits the hole hard. I mean, he's a downhill runner. He hits the hole flying and usually pushes the pile for at least 5 or 6.
Yep.
I think Lenny started looking good towards the end of the game like that, where he was starting to move the ball, get us going a little bit. But, yeah, that's definitely going to be something we need to get going, especially if we want to start controlling the clock a little more towards the end of games when we have the lead. And then penalties, 11 for 106.
Yeah.
First game back, though, but, you know, as we saw after the Chicago game, that's something Brady fixes on his teams. So
yeah, and I agree. It's something that I don't think is going to be a big problem. And honestly, I think a lot of the penalties came on the defensive side of the ball and kind of defensive holdings, and I don't think that's based on our guys' play. I think early on in the NFL season, the refs are kind of hitting that. I think Jensen had that one run-in, which I thought was a brutal 15-yarder on us. The guy punched him in the face. Even that meme of that ref's face right behind him, he couldn't believe the guy punched him. And somehow it's offsetting 15-yarders. And Jensen's one of those guys, as we know, that he's not afraid to get his, you know what I mean, get dirty, which I love. You know what I mean? He's absolutely our center. He's running the point. He protects Brady just like the other guys, but he's not afraid to, you know, toe that fine line of trying to get a shot on him, which he clearly drew. It's just I couldn't believe that
they're calling
he even got a 15-yarder. The guy threw a punch.
Yeah. So put that week behind us. Got the dub. Now we go into this week's news a little bit. Big one first. Whitehead, BA says is going to be full speed and ready to go. As we talked about before, I mean, he's one of the hardest hitting safeties in the league. They've said that our teammates have said he's pound for pound, maybe the toughest guy in the team. And that's just a huge addition coming back there. Him and Winfield back it's got to be one of the best upcoming duos in the NFL safety-wise.
Yeah, I agree.
That's pretty big. Sean Murphy-Bunting, tough. 4 weeks to full season. That did not look good.
No, and honestly, when it first came out that they said it might be 4 weeks, I was optimistic. But I just saw BA's press conference again today, and they asked him about it, and they still don't. They're going for a second opinion. They still don't really have a good idea on it. I mean, I'm hopeful that we're closer to 4 weeks, but I think, 4 weeks to a full season is kind of a weird range, no? Like when people are talking about injuries and comebacks, like how can it just feels like a weird timeline. So unfortunately, I think I'm leaning more towards it being significant, but I hope not.
Zach Triner, long snapper injury, something to keep an eye on. Like you said, huge part of the game. As you know, you were a tight end long snapper in college. That's something that if long snapper's not on, that can hurt field position.
Huge. It's huge. I mean, and that's the thing. It's a huge field position thing. And as we mentioned, special teams showed on Thursday night. So that's definitely a spot to keep an eye on. But at the same time, some new acquisitions. Andrew Adams, who's been on the roster, on and off practice squad, active roster last year. He gets moved up to the active roster, which I've had times with him watching him that I think he's looked great. Other times I'm like, how is this guy, you know what I mean, out there? But at the same time, opportunity calls, right? We got to fill it in. I'd rather bring in a guy who's been around our system, our guys. They got that chemistry rather than being in a pinch where we got to bring someone off the street. But that's huge for us that we have that kind of depth on our practice squad and guys who have been around the system.
Get them some experience early, so end of the season, if we really need them, they'll be ready to go.
Yep.
Gronk was back. The press conference with BA. I mean, him and Brady look in sync. They look like 3 years ago in the Pats. Yeah. So that's huge.
And one of the things that what I loved about Gronk when I heard his press conference today is that they're asking about his 100th TD with Brady, but he's talking about the run game. And I think that's good because, if Gronk's talking about it, it's being talked about on the offense side of the ball that the run game performance wasn't what we needed to be week one. And that's great because I think that's going to be a point of emphasis going into Atlanta. And BA already came out and said Rowe's getting the start, which I think is awesome that they're saying, hey, we're going to go back to him just like Brady did after the Godwin drop and the fumble on the goal line. Brady found him on the back shoulder. I love that's the mindset of our offense is that, you know what I mean? A guy makes a mistake, a guy stumbles, bang, we're going right back to him.
Huge.
And then, of course, Devin White mic'd up this week. It's must watch. It's must watch. So anyone who is hearing us talk about this right now, I don't even care if you're a Bucs fan. He is must watch. The trash that he talks, the energy that he brings. The guy buzzes all over the field, and he's everything that you want in your linebacker.
Yeah, he's one of the best trash talkers in the NFL, and he admits that he talks trash. I mean, that's something he doesn't try to hide. But so this week we got Atlanta. As you know, Atlanta may not look good week one, but any NFC South matchup, it's going to be close. It's just how it is. Even when the Bucs were going 2-win seasons, 2 of those wins might have been against the Saints and Falcons. It's just that's the kind of division it is. We played each other. Everyone knows each other. Games are going to be close. So, and
even though everyone knows they didn't look great last week, like you mentioned, we know Atlanta's they're not an easy team to play. You know what I mean? They're talented on both sides of the ball. And at the end of the day, Julio's not there anymore, but they still got that dude, Calvin Ridley, who kind of has already filled the shoes of, as we know, Julio Jones torched the Bucs for multiple 300-yard games. And Calvin Ridley, weirdly enough, the last 2 games last year has kind of filled those shoes. So that's a guy that, even though they were quiet last week, they got so many weapons. Kyle Pitts, I mean, we saw what he did at Florida. For us, that we showed that we can get attacked in the air last week with Dallas. That's definitely something that it's got to be a point of emphasis for us against Atlanta.
And even last year, Matt Ryan picked us apart. I mean, some of these games. And as you know, Bowles, great second half adjustments. Come out in second half, kind of shut him down a little bit. But still, in that last game, 31-27. Close game going in there.
Yep.
Like you said, so Rojo getting the start, and Falcons very susceptible to run game. Gave 173 yards last week. So, I mean, this is a huge chance for us to get the ground game going, kind of get some confidence.
And I think it's big, too, because you look ahead at the games that we're about to be playing. We're going to Los Angeles, and then we're going to New England. 2 teams that, you know what I mean? The Rams had our number last year, 2 other powerhouses, and obviously going back to New England for Brady. So I think it's something that we can't have a one-dimensional offense going into weeks 3 and weeks 4. We got to establish a run and get that confidence going before we get into some of these, you know what I mean, juggernaut opponents like the Rams.
Yep. As we already mentioned, Falcons are going to air it out on us like usual. Our secondary, it's going to be a big point of emphasis this game.
And honestly, a guy who scares me is Cordero Patterson. I remember watching the Bears game with you
last year
on Thursday night, and I don't think the rest of the Bears game I watched all year long, I don't think he caught half the amount of balls out of the backfield as he did against us. So he's a dude that I don't know how he's got our number, but he's got me scarred from last year. He's a guy that we got to have circled because he killed us last year in Chicago.
And as much as our secondary's got to, step it up, so is the pressure. We got to start getting to – we can't let Ryan sit back there all day. He's a veteran. He's going to just pick us apart. But if we can get some pressure on him, he can't move too well anymore. So hopefully those third down situations, which we struggle on third downs this week. I think we let up 53% on third downs, kind of bottom half. And, that's been historically third and long. We've almost always been expecting the other team to get a first down on third and long.
Yeah.
So it's something we definitely got to improve this week with the pass rush.
Absolutely. I mean, some historical things with the Falcons, as we've kind of already talked about. I mean, last season we had our way with them, 44-27 in the second game, 31-27 in the first game. But at the end of the day, as we mentioned, the Falcons offense has kind of always had our number. I mean, they've put up 20-plus points in the last 5 of the last 6 matchups. We've won 3 of those 5, but at the end of the day, they've had our number putting up 20-plus points. Now, luckily, we've scored 30-plus in 4 of those 5, which got us to edge them. But for a team that has a pretty damn solid defense for the last, I would say, even 5-6 years. I mean, before we got Brady, as we know that our defense had been stout. It was just some offensive mistakes that we made that put our defense in some tough holes where we gave up points, but it was on short fields, even when we held them to 3. Atlanta's been that team that's kind of had our number off defensively. I mean, I think we have the guys to turn that around, but they just have so many weapons, and it's just they're good. I know they are. If you can't pressure Matt Ryan, they're good.
Taking all that into consideration, what's your prediction for this game this week?
I still think we handle them. I think our offense is explosive because I think we get the run game going, and then it opens up all those deep cross play action, those shots with AB. Mike Evans gets back in the groove. I think he's going to catch legitimately 3 or 4 of those play action Brady comebacks where he's just eating it up, gets some yak yards. I think we put up a 40 piece on him. And then, but at the same time, I think they score. I don't think they get to that 20 points that they have in 5 of the last 6, but I think they come in around 14 to 17 points, but I think we beat them pretty handily. What about you?
I think the pressure is going to hit this week. I mean, they're not going to be able to run the ball. No one has really been able to run the ball on us. I think they're going to struggle to put up points. I'm thinking around 35-14, pretty close to you. I'm thinking offense isn't going to struggle. The Falcons defense is not that good. I'm thinking 2 goal line touchdowns. Mike Evans, got to get him going. I think Brady's going to throw his little fades, so now we love. I don't think they have a cornerback that can handle them.
Yep.
So I think it's not an easy win, but I could see second half us kind of pulling away, close first half. But I think we're gelling. I think last week's game was perfect. I mean, we got that kind of wake-up call out of the way, and I think it's time to start rolling.
Yeah. So what are you thinking on the gambling side of things?
Let's see, what's the spread? So my 7.5 first half.
Yeah.
That? So what was the spread for the total game?
I think it was 12 last time I checked. Let me pull it up.
That is a high spread for an NFL game, but I would be confident laying the points with the Bucs. I don't think 12 is too big of a number. I think 14 I can see as a pretty reasonable 2 touchdown win. I think you got to go over. I think if we're going to be putting up at least 35-40, I think that over is going to hit.
Yeah, 12.5. To be honest with you, I don't like that.
No.
I agree with you. I mean, I like the Bucs to win. That's why I like the first half at 7.5 because I think Atlanta's offense still starts out a little bit slow like they did from last week, but they eventually pick it up and put some points on the board. And as you mentioned, the over, I think it's strong. I mean, it's hit 6 out of the last 6 times. Both offenses, when they're on, they're on. But like you said, 12.5 points. This is professional football. Those kind of spreads are rarely covered. Even when you had a winless Jets team last year that they were covering monster spreads like that because it's professional football.
Yeah, and Mike Evans props. I think over under for touchdowns is probably be about 1.5, 1. I mean, I think I would take that this game. I think you're going to get him going. And yards, it's not out yet, but might be something to look at.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, people are talking about a lot with fantasy football. Do you quit on Mike Evans? Do you try to trade him for value? So many weapons on that Bucs offense. There are a lot of weapons on that Bucs offense, but at the end of the day, Mike Evans is Mike Evans, and people seem to forget that year after year. We talk about it all the time, how this guy is not considered a top 5 receiver year after year after year after what he produces year after year after year. Like you mentioned, I don't know what the total yards prop bet is. I will be taking it because I think he gets fed. I don't think there's a guy in Atlanta that can guard him, and I think Brady loves him. At the end of the day, I think that's what it comes down to.
Love it. And so to wrap this up, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about our guy, how he looked last week on the Saints, Jameis Winston. Kind of tough seeing him put up 5 touchdowns and 1 pick.
Yeah. It worries me a little bit, because we stood by him for so many years in Tampa Bay. We fought those battles, as many Bucs fans did, when people said he's got to go. And we gave him every opportunity. But you're right. I like to see his success because I think he can be a franchise quarterback. But the fact that it's with the Saints and in our division, it's worrisome because he's going to come to Tampa and we're going to go to New Orleans. And, the football gods, we all know how they work, and he'll bite us once. Unfortunately, I hope it doesn't happen. That's how football gods work. He will bite us once, and it's going to be goddamn it time. So I'm happy to see he's playing well.
Yeah.
I hate that it's for the Saints because
that's weird because usually we both hate the Saints, hate almost every player in the Saints, but something about Jameis that I still can't hate, and still like watching him ball. Yeah, soft box for Jameis, but we'll get there when that time comes. All right, sounds good. Let's fire the cannons this week. Let's go Bucs.
Let's go Bucs. Fire the cannons.